Hello and welcome to another Mobalytics video. I'm your host Rakayu, and in this one we are going to look at the champions most in need of a rework. On the back of having Fiddlesticks released and on the cusp of having Volibear revealed to us, it makes sense that some champions just don't fit the game and need to be changed. Their kits are simply outdated or have problems in them that make them either obnoxious or totally useless. They're difficult to balance, and they're only strong if they're essentially overpowered. Their numbers are too high. And if that isn't the case, they are not picked and they fall into nothingness. To be forgotten in the void of unused champions until someone says, "Hey, do you remember Udyr?" And you respond, "What do you mean? What's an Udyr?" So as the game has changed, new champions are cooler, they're more fun to play. I mean, sometimes they're not fun to play against, I'll give you that, because there's just so many aspects to the kit. Passives that take 3 years to read and that are longer than a Silmarillion. But you know, sometimes they do release simpler champions like Sett, who's one of the least complex new champions we've had in a while. He has a stun that's sort of a skill shot. He has that true damage AoE that feels like a one-shot death ray, and then he's got that giant shield, and he has with his Q the mobility for a bruiser. Now imagine as we go into our first champion, Cho'Gath was released right after Sett. All that would happen is that there would just be Keck W's in the Twitch chat on the release stream. The main reason is his kit is simply outdated. You know, good luck hitting that Void Spike knockup when even Galio, a giant gargoyle thing, has mobility in the New World Order. This is especially worse if you play Cho'Gath in TFT and you think, wow, that's a huge knockup that's really useful, you know, nice and big. And then you go to Summoner's Rift and it's this puny little AoE knockup and you think, well, you know, I can only fit one Brahmin there. How am I meant to knock up more than one person? And add to that, he's immobile, literally zero mobility in his kit, and relies on Flash Chomp for most of his kills. His spells do one thing. Seems weird, right? Your spell, you read the description, and that's what it does. Most newer rework champions have all these weird passive actives and assorted magic read to go with it. Cho is simply knockup, silence. E is supposedly the most advanced thing, and that was even updated in and of itself, but it's really a minor update, and then his ult is true damage plus size. Compare this to other tanks in the game. Now, obviously he's not a pure tank, you can build him full AP, and he does way better because of this AP build in the mid lane. So he has carved out himself this unique AP viability in the mid lane. But look at Ornn, you've got the passive system, tons of stats, tons of interesting ways to scale his abilities, chain CC, mobility, tankiness. That's really a good example of a modern tank. Then you've got Maokai, who was updated nicely, of course, a couple years ago, but he's still managed to survive and be updated just because he has way more CC in his kit. He has a dash, he has that lockdown CC, he has something that makes it easy for him to deal with the modern meta. The only thing Cho'Gath wins in the game is being the best gentleman. Now, you know, this is quite funny, but you think we're gonna make a rework video and not talk about Ryze? He's just so difficult to balance. He's either terrible in solo queue and amazing in pro play, or he's just terrible for everyone. His kit is too complex in general. It's too big a difference in win rates between low and high elo players. And I'm sure you have people you play with that like Ryze and can use him decently, especially in Clash, because of his ultimate utility. But the thing is, his play rate is still always very low. Better players know his combos and can do very well. They know how to scale and play safe. And as I said, the utility of that ultimate means he has to have more power in his regular combo because it doesn't provide anything else in terms of damage. This means a fed Ryze doesn't need his ultimate in order to delete you. And honestly, when you get deleted by Ryze, isn't it the most anticlimactic thing in the world? When a Malphite one-shots you with AP, it's a big boom and a crater and, you know, dust, and you think the dinosaurs are back and they also died again. When Ryze kills you, it's like a paper flies through the wind, you look at it, you get a paper cut on your cheek and you die. So when Hades asks you how you entered his realm, you just go, well, I don't know, some blue dude looked at me funny and I'm here. So yes, it's frustrating to play against sometimes when he gets fed, but he's also not very exciting to play as, and he's not as unhealthy as he has been in the past. Let's just say this current iteration of rework is probably one of the best versions of him, but it hasn't really solved the issue and the paradox and the ultimate question of what is Ryze? Or when is Ryze technically? Or was it why is Ryze? But what about the Void Puppy, the ancient Kog'Maw, the tiny little thing that splurges his guts all over you when you kill him? That's right, because you should be killing him a lot. Outdated kit. Being immobile again is one of his biggest problems. We have no issue with the mobile champions. It's good to have some champions that don't have 300 dashes. The problem is they need something in their kit that allows them to deal with it. Because everything has a dash, Kog'Maw needs Lulu, otherwise he cannot play the game. You can't use his superior range on his W that much because guess what? They just close the gap and they kill you. And the W really was a massive plus to his kit or even the slow on his E. When you used those spells and dripped your Acid Rain ultimate over people, that was a huge thing and made it very easy for him to poke out and beat other characters. But not anymore, and that's why he always comes attached to a Lulu. If you don't have a Lulu support for your Kog'Maw, consider playing something a bit more fun in the game because they're not going to really carry. It cannot be a healthy design for the game if he almost needs a specific champion to help him actually exist. And by the way, a Kog'Maw that gets gets fed, that has Lulu, is actually way stronger than many duos in the game and can absolutely 2v8 the game. That's what's hysterical. He goes from totally nothing to getting a few kills to being totally invincible. You know, I'm no expert, but that doesn't sound like healthy game design. Now let's jump to another tank/fighter, Mundo. Sort of an outdated kit, but basic, nothing too complex. I think that's nice. That's why we like the Good Doctor. They've done a very good job of keeping him mostly relevant, but he sees significantly more time in the jungle now because he can get away with his older kit and it isn't punished as much early. But still, like everything else that has an older kit like this, even if it's updated and kept relevant to a decent degree, it's very numbers reliant. If the numbers are great, remember his ultimate healing buff, then he will 100% be meta because, you know, when something doesn't die, pro play seems to think, hey, nice meta champ. With bad numbers, he's just a squishy minion. And other tanks bring more CC, they don't just have a spam slow. And the idea of a meat shield is decent, I mean that's what he's meant to be. Heal through all the damage and just sustain. But the big problem with the game currently is that healing is everywhere and you don't need Mundo to be the meat shield that does it. Why take an older champ that is reliant on numbers when you could have a Yuumi, you have the Echo, you have the Nami, Soraka, all these other things that heal and sustain. Maokai also has his own built-in healing. Akali exists, Katarina. I mean, you don't need a Mundo to be able to tank all the damage anymore. And he's very easy to counter, and because of this, we think he needs a rework. Now next up is Corki, once an ADC, now a mid laner. You just can't balance him because either he's the best mid laner with his obscene damage, hybrid damage, or worst, he's just a flying dude in a weird boat bath. There isn't really a middle ground of, hey, this champion's kinda decent and I can play him into certain matchups. He's either oppressive or he's not. That being said, when he does get his items, he becomes a huge problem and he just one-shots everyone. The big problem does come from the fact that he is a hybrid ADC and mage. It's hard to balance both sides. He has to build like an AD so his abilities can't do much. That's why you see things like the Sorg Boot, and late game just becomes stupid OP. But you can't make him too good in the early game because he's a scaling champion and he's ranged, so he will dominate the lane if he's too strong in that phase. So ultimately, which way do you take it? It's insanely numbers dependent, and there is a huge difference between lower and higher ranks. So that's why we think he needs a rework, and it's not only because this model looks like it's 2D. Now on things that are not 2D or definitely 3D but have unhealthy design, Rammus, or as I say on my channel, Rammus. Roll around, press E, press W, and then, you know, let the enemies kill themselves. Don't really have to do much. Apart from moving around really fast, following the person in a fight, what else do you do? There are so many more things in the game now that can interrupt his approach process, and that's why he does so well on low elo and really falls off on high. High elo players know how to disengage and kite back and not get caught up like that. Low elo players don't have that coordination, and so he runs amok down there, but in high elo really doesn't do anything, and his gameplay doesn't offer much in terms of being anything other than a spiky ball thing. I mean, his thematic makes sense, but again, it's not really healthy, is it? I mean, you walk into someone, you press a point and click button that keeps them taunted for 1,000 years, and then they die because your innate spikes killed them. Definitely great outplayability. And that's the point. I say that sarcastically, but if he has huge numbers, when he does it, you die, because he's destructive with his tank and his damage relationship, but if his numbers aren't high and he taunts you, then once the taunt has expired and you haven't died from the innate damage, you sit there, look at him down, and you say, who's a good puppy? Definitely one of the tanks I feel could use a rework in the jungle, bring back some diversity to that area. We only have Sejuani, we have Zac, and there's nothing else that really works so well in high elo. But there's a lot of possibilities that they can do with reworks on these champions. Now next up, you might have forgotten he exists, but Skarner is a champion. It's been a long time since our 60% win rate patch, although that has scarred me for life. Ultimately, yes, he can still be quite simplistic, but he is mainly just a press R button. Righteous Glory, Flash, R, drag him to your team and watch them go to work. That's literally it. Nothing complex. You have the spy system, but that's more gimmicky than anything else. And also just makes extra minion people feel better. But it's really one-dimensional. You run at people, you spam Q constantly, you have to hit your E and you press R. When champions have a very specific and binary way to use their kit, it doesn't vary based on the situation that much. That means it's very difficult to play them in higher elos when they're predictable. That means you cannot outplay people to a significant degree, and that means you're reliant on numbers, which makes you boring and very difficult to deal with when you are meta or OP because it's so simple to execute. Hey Riot, rework this guy right here. And now another tedious champion that we really don't want to see any more of on the LCK. Guys, there are different supports, there are different ways to play. Tahm Kench doesn't need to be in every game. His kit has been nerfed so much, and yet he is still picked at the higher tiers of play. His win rate is still horrifically bad everywhere else. In our good opinion here, very unhealthy for the game and ultimately not fun and bad design because they cannot seem to balance it purely because of how he operates from a peel perspective. When he isn't balanced, he just goes top lane and tongue lashes people down and you lose. When he's very underbalanced, he simply just eat there and protect your ADC from themselves. Sure, he's a newer champion, he has the slow, the thick skin, but the play pattern is just make sure you're peeling the right person and understand when to use your ult. If something is going to be able to deny playmaking in action, like a Soraka, like a Yuumi, there needs to be downsides. Now, Yuumi is her own issue, definitely needs to be dealt with, but in Tahm Kench's way, what else does he have? How many times are we going to see this champion come in and out of pro meta and underused everywhere else? His kit needs to change, he needs to be redirected and basically just reworked from the ground up, from the swamp up. And now we have Udyr. Now, of course, we've talked about this in the intro by making fun of him because I didn't know what he was. And that's the thing, when he is in the game as your jungler, you weep for the outcome of the game. You think, oh no, someone is playing Udyr jungle seriously. He's just outdated. His ultimate rework was his ultimate skin. And then you think and pause, and that was 7 years ago. Sure, Trick can play him and kind of uses him, but he does it in his own funny way. This is not objectively a good jungle champion. Struggles to keep up with all other junglers, no dash, no movement, just very fast, easily kiteable, doesn't have the unique AFK farm and objective control he used to have. Why do that when you can simply play Shyvana, who has managed to evolve and keep up her playstyle to be relevant, and at this point is actually very good and used by the current rank 1 EUS jungler in Challenger? When's the last time you saw someone in Challenger jungling and they said, yes, I used Udyr to get here? The buffs to giving him an extra ability upgrade and things like this, I mean, that has helped and band-aided it a little bit, but you remember back in the Ferroflow days when Phoenix Max was actually a thing instead of permanent Tiger? Effectively, it would be better just to have a nice ultimate in that button rather than something like that. And last up, we have Azir. We thought about swapping this with something else, but when we went down the list, you look at the play rate, you look at the win rate, and you just feel sad. The historic Emperor of Shurima that led to the memes in the sub, that led to all that exciting pro play, that everyone was trying to get good at when he was released, that's all gone now. Low play rate, low win rate. Such a cool kit, feels so well designed, so smooth, but in reality, when he is strong, he cannot be healthy for the game. A control mage with that much control is too controlling. If he's strong at lower ranks, his skill expression means he's overpowered at higher ones, such as the way things go. He's gonna have a 42% win rate in solo queue and still be useful in pro play. In actuality, he has a 45% win rate in solo queue and hence you're seeing him a bit more. The problem also is that he is extremely mechanically intensive as well as knowledge intensive, knowing when to position your soldiers, where to position your soldiers, when to use a shuffle, when to use everything else, how best to use your ultimate. Do you have an Ornn for that extra knockback combo? And people just aren't willing to put the time in to learn something that's only going to be a 45% win rate for them. And that's my issue and our issue with a lot of champions that are good in pro play and terrible for solo queue. We all play the game. I want to play Azir and Ryze. I want to be able to have fun with these champions. Maybe a support really wants to play Tahm Kench. And it's okay to have high skill camp champions that are not very accessible. It's just not good to have high skill camp champs that are not accessible and only 3 people can use them. As such, an Azir rework really doesn't have to make him more accessible to everyone, just a bit more than he is currently, and such that you can actually play him solo queue with hopes of winning. Maintain the fluidity and the well-designed aspect of his kits, and then bring the Emperor of Shurima to the people. And there you have it, 10 champions that we feel need a rework and have issues in the current meta today. Let's hope Riot has eyes on them as well. Look forward to the new rework of Volibear coming very soon this year. Don't forget to like, share, and comment if you enjoyed this Mobalytics video. Subscribe for all the excellent tutorials coming your way very soon. I've been your host for Caillou, and as always, I will see you all in the next video.